careers in competition. So that's the area I've ended up working in. It's a bit about my career history. I was at Royal Holloway 2003 in Dan's year, and a bit like Dan, I didn't know quite what to do afterwards, so I was keen to be a pilot, but that didn't work out for various reasons. So I ended up deciding to do an MSc in economics, like quite a few of us did, which is actually a very useful qualification to have because the majority of economists do need to do an MSc at some point, which is what's on the downside of becoming an economist. But on the plus side, there's no professional training qualification for economists, so there's no 3-year ACA like for an accountant or whatever it might be to be an actuary, for example. So that took me up to 2004, and then I joined Government Economic Service, which I suppose is probably still the largest recruiter of economists. Unlike Dan, I was quite interested in macro actually, so I rang them up and said I want to go to the Treasury. They didn't have a vacancy, so they said, what's your second choice? I've done quite a lot of the competition stuff through the industrial organisation course at Royal Holloway, so to the OFT. So that's where I ended up for a couple of years, and then this is one of the advantages of joining Government Economic Services. Not only do you get a good training ground, but you get to switch between departments quite regularly. So you could be Ministry of Defence one day, you could be at the Foreign Office another year. And it's really quite up to you. So I had a friend there, for example, who became the second Economic Secretary at the British Embassy in Washington. Somebody else was in the MOD, somebody else was in the Treasury. And it's, as I was also in GS, you might mention it as well. But it's probably a good place to look. I mean, it's quite a lot of competition to get into it, but it's certainly worth looking at. And I'll mention some of the other ways into the government later on. So I switched to the Competition Commission a year later, spent a year there. And then after 3 years, I thought it would be maybe time to go out into the private sector, get a bit of experience out there, and then maybe come back in later on at some point, which I haven't done yet because I'm still at Ashurst. But Ashurst is a law firm. It's probably, I think, about the 10th largest law firm in the UK. So it does corporate law in the main, so it could be everything from corporate transactions to employment law, litigation. The competition is one of the main departments. I think it's quite interesting in a way that competition, when a lot of the fewer people which are there now joined maybe 15 years ago, I think we had 3 people in the competition department. It was quite a small area. A lot of the competition consultancies didn't exist. The OFT maybe had 5 economists, something like that. Now the OFT's got 70 economists, we've got 50 people. It's just one of those areas that's just grown and grown, and it's getting more and more technical all the time. So I think it's one of those areas that can carry on growing. So if anyone's looking to go into economics, it's quite a good way of getting in. So what do I do as an economist in competition? Basically, I mean, if anyone's done the industrial course, either for the third year or for the masters, but it's basically doing what you do in that. It's looking at merger control, which is based on effective microeconomic theory, abuse of dominance, so you've got a firm with a market share above 50% if they're either exploiting customers or excluding new firms. Collusion, you've probably come across that at some point in micro. Market studies, so examples of that are like the BAA study, for example, the Competition Commission did, where they decided that BAA couldn't own Heathrow Gatwick and Stansted, and they had to sell off Stansted. Economic regulation, that's one of those areas that some people really enjoy, and some people specialise completely in economic regulation, which a bit like Dan was mentioning about some of the regulated industries like Ofcom and Ofgem and so on. Other people don't enjoy it quite so much, so they're competition economists, like me, just do bits of it now and again when we've got time or when there's a client. So it's within the legal framework. I mean, I suppose, I don't know to what extent, I think when I did competition here, they briefly covered it, but basically the law governs competitions. They've got cartels which are illegal, for example. You've got legislation that lets the Competition Commission break up large companies. Merger control, Enterprise Act, they're allowed to investigate mergers where they've got more than 25% share, and to all the companies make divestments and so on. So it's not an area which I particularly worry too much about, but it's something we have regard to. So we try and work harmoniously with the lawyers where we can do. So this slide's really just, without getting into too much depth, especially just to show you that what I do as an economist day to day is not that dissimilar to what I did when I was at Royal Holloway. The only advantage, or one advantage I think for me, is that despite doing a degree in economics and a master's in economics, I was never really a big fan of maths, and I didn't really realise when I started how much maths I did. But there are quite a few people which do really enjoy that, and they'll go into, there's always one person who likes it, so they'll maybe do some of that, but the rest of us will look at all sorts of other bits of evidence. So we'll meet the client, we'll have discussions with them, we'll ask them for internal documents to often set out how they see the market. We'll look at research reports, certainly the FT, the Competition Commission and the European Commission. They'll speak to third parties. So if they're doing a cinema merger, for example, they'll contact the 5 biggest cinema operators and say, what do you think about this deal? They'll do surveys of customers and that sort of. So there's a lot of evidence that's quite applied. It's not just theory. There is the odd case, if you get to a second phase at the Competition Commission, maybe where people do theory, but it's a lot, quite applied stuff. So a lot of things we go through, like barriers to entry, buyer power. Instead of having an equation which maybe sets out what buyer power will be depending on how many firms there are in the industry and the various assumptions of competition in a dynamic framework or whatever it would be called, buyer power will be contacting the top 5 supermarkets and saying, can you give any evidence that you've got a good deal from these companies? And if you can, then we're more likely to let them merge through, and if you can't, then we won't. So coordinated effects, again, that's another sort of area we deal with. So what I mainly do day to day, so Ashurst basically decided about 15 years ago that instead of using consultancies to do the work for competition economics, we do it in-house, because it effectively just keeps the money in-house, really. So a lot of the big law firms in the UK will recruit consulting firms like Frontier and so on to do the competition, but we just basically keep it in-house. But other than that, the job is effectively the same. A lot of drafting, so maybe making a submission. If a client wants to buy out a company, we'll do a submission to the Office of Fair Trading or the European Commission, depending on how big the deal is. And that might be 40, 50 pages, just of writing where you're setting out the market definition and the competition in the market and the market shares, that sort of stuff. So a lot more writing than there maybe was on a master's where it's a bit more mathematical. Market questionnaires, so one of the main ways the competition authorities find out about deals is they write to people and they say they hear 24 questions about this deal, going through all everything from market definition to entry and so on. So we'll respond to those. Clients vary quite a lot, so sometimes you get a client that wants to answer it themselves and they want us to take a look at it before it goes in to make sure they haven't said anything that's awful. Other people just want us to write it from scratch, it really depends. But I think it's quite important we do look at these things because clients, although they're really sophisticated companies sometimes, they're not always that sophisticated at competition, and particularly there's a bit of a tension where a lot of these clients want to get do a deal and to justify it to the banks and the shareholders. They're saying we'll reduce competition, we'll put prices up, it's going to be really profitable. But if the FT gets on of that, it's going to be straight to having to divest part of the business again, probably, or having the whole deal blocked, even worse. So we try and supervise them to make sure they at least phrase things as they maybe should do. Quantifying cartel damages, that's another one. So if there's been a cartel, quantify what the damages are, and then there'll often be a follow-on action afterwards where consumers will sue companies to try and get their money back. Risk assessments is another big area, so a lot of deals actually don't go ahead, or maybe even get to the public domain just because the client will say, we want to buy our newest rival, can we do it? And we'll maybe say, well, if you do it, there's a 70% chance it'll get referred to the Competition Commission, there's a 80% chance it'll get blocked after that, so we'll just forget the whole thing then. So it's quite an important tool, I think, of deterrence and guiding clients and strategies which are going to keep them away from the competition authorities. Sectors, again, a bit like Dan was saying, a wide range: leisure, manufacturers, retailers, technology, transport. So, and some ability to, so I was a pilot years ago, so I'm quite interested in aviation still, so I'll try and do the aviation deals and stuff. So there's a bit of a role to do that. So, so that's what I do. I thought it would be worth careers top event just going through briefly what people can do. So say OFT and Competition Commission, they're becoming the Competition and Markets Authority from April next year. So worth, if people might be interested in that sort of thing, taking a look at their websites. They do recruit through the GES, that's where they get most of the people, but they do have summer schemes and stuff which they don't do through the GES. They also, the Competition Commission does direct recruitment. So yeah, worth taking a look at that. That's another way to get in. Ofcom for communications, Ofgem regulates gas and electricity, Ofwat for water. They don't tend to go through the GES so much, so that's sort of 3 potential employers. Civil Aviation Authority, they've actually got quite a big team of economists there now, which is getting bigger all the time. Because essentially the CAA has now got a duty to set prices at Heathrow, Gatwick and Stansted, because they've got market power. So they've got a whole team of economists there saying, you know, how much should Heathrow be able to charge per landing, how much should Stansted be able to charge, and so on. Financial Conduct Authority is brand new, it's quite a big organisation now, or it's getting a big, brand new competition team as well. So they're to effectively regulate banks and to make sure banks are competing effectively. So definitely, you know, if that might be of interest, check some of those. I say internships as well. I mean, definitely the FT does them. Some others might just take you in ad hoc. Private sector, well, Ashurst, we've got 5 economists at Ashurst, so we're quite small, but we do recruit sort of once a year or so. So Frontier, obviously here. Compass Lexicon, this is another similar, maybe not as good as Frontier, but obviously not. No. CRA, which is Charles River Associates, Europe Economics, London Economics. There, you know, again, there's lots of people since the competition's grown just started doing this, and so there are lots of opportunities to go in. A lot of them will do summer schemes. Quite a few of them will do a scheme where you can join for a year after your undergraduate, and they might sponsor you towards a master's. So that's what we're looking into. Alex Partners is a big US firm, and they've just set up a consulting competition business in London. So, my old boss from Ashurst left to join them actually. So, yeah, they're getting quite big. NERAS, National Economic Research, and PwC and KPMG actually. I mentioned them because they've sort of jumped on this bandwagon as well, and they have both got competition teams now. So PwC is, I think, doing direct graduate recruitment now, which is quite unusual for the private sector for economists. And KPMG, one of my old colleagues at the Competition Commission, has set up a competition team at KPMG. So, also worth looking at. It's a bit about finding out more. Society of Business Economists, I've got a bit of a vested interest because I'm the treasurer there, so we get some money for each person that joins. So that doesn't go to me personally, it goes to the society. But £45 a year to join. So we've got about 10 or 15 events a year, all in London, which are macro events, micro events, master classes. We get some pretty big speakers. We've got one, for example, end of November, which is Chief Economist at Goldman Sachs and Chief Economist at HSBC, speaking about the euro. We've got a special offer as well. If you 10 students join together, then or in the same year, then they get it for £30 a year. So, and there's free drinks and stuff after all. So I think most people just about manage to get it back through free drinks on the way through it. There's something called the Association of Competition Economists as well, which is it's a bit more expensive. I mean, it's not something you maybe join so much because it's a bit more expensive, and they've got a conference once a year that's normally outside the UK and so on, but it's a good way of seeing jobs advertised and stuff. And likewise, a network of industrial economists. There's one also called the Westminster Forum. It's just an organisation that does seminars on sort of topical issues in competition and economics and stuff every sort of few weeks. And I think for students it's normally pretty cheap, and sometimes they can do it for free. So it's a good way of maybe sort of networking and meeting people. But it's worth to say. You know, I can send to you some of the links if you like to. That's it. Yeah. So yeah, so if you've got any questions, just let me know at the end.